Hey, it's Keith. Welcome back. So quite often people ask me, how do you do the carpentry work? You built a drawer slide over there for your cabinet for your kitchen related stuff. How do you do that? People said, I'm not a carpenter. And I'll just say I'm not either. I've had some exposure to it, but let me kind of go through the simple things you need to do and the tools you need to have and what you need to get, what you have here. And I'll just walk you through it. And I'll just show you exactly what I did and how you can do something similar. So from a tool point of view, I just needed a screw gun, right? A cordless drill gun, which I had for the whole vehicle build. I also bought a jigsaw. I didn't buy any other special tools. Some people have table saws. I don't own a table saw. Don't have a table saw. Router, don't have one. I basically used a little Dremel bits to, make the nice grooves. And the other things I had were, from the parts point of view, is I have these brackets. These are 2-inch brackets that I just screwed into the inside. I didn't screw into the wood, so I don't have to pre-drill anything. For the lumber I used, or the timber as I like to say, this is pine wood, so this is 5.5 inches. This goes on the top and on the sides. But the interior dimensions, since I want to have a little bit of space, because I knew I had that, this is the space I had to cover within a little bit of space on the back and on the front to provide a little bit of flexibility. I also, on the top, I used a 3.5-inch piece of the same pine. And again, this is in the same pine family here. Okay, and it comes in, 6, 8 foot, and I think maybe even 10 foot. So you can kind of get whatever you need based upon what you're trying to achieve. So again, I used the 3.5 for the box, for the shelving and the interior frame. And then the outside, I used the 5.5. Again, these are the brackets. So the last piece of timber that I used was this Birch Plywood. This is an 1/8 inch thick, and I used it on the back side. And really easy to use. It looks clean. It looked pretty close to the pine. So I wanted to have kind of that similar timber finished clean look. So I didn't have to like paint it or stain it or anything like that. I just wanted to have a little bit of contrast in here. And then from a drawer slide perspective, there's basically 2 kinds. So again, most of this stuff you can buy at a big box retailer or your local hardware store. These 2 guys, my understanding is you cannot, because I couldn't get them at the local big box retailer. And there's some significant reasons why. So there's 2 different kinds of drawer slides that were used on this build. As you can see here, these are super heavy duty. Now I think these are 18-inch long, and then they extend to almost the same length, so it's like 36 inches. But really nice ball bearings, and when they lock into place, they lock into place, right? It's not coming out. And this is the one that is really the most unique one. And this is the locking drawer slide. So if you notice here, it's got a little blue handle, right? So this allows it to extend out and locks on the way out. And until you click up, this won't lock in. So it locks in. So this is the one I used on the side. And this is the one I used on the bottom. So for the sake of this discussion, I'm just going to show this to you kind of, right here. I didn't use the 5.5 on the bottom. I used the 3.5 on the bottom. So essentially this, I have an L bracket that supports this. And there's like a little bump out because of the fuel fill on the outside. They built like a little box, which is another consideration for why I did what I did. And you'll notice the distance between the bottom shelf and the fascia here, it's the same elevation because I had to overcome that space. So essentially what I had done was, again, the same thickness wood, right? For the top, for the 5.5 is a 3.5. So I essentially took an L bracket, mounted that to the frame. Again, the whole box of this ambulance is like 3/4 inch plywood. It's like marine grade plywood. So you would bolt this down. Again, it has all these holes here that you can see throughout here. You can bolt this to anything, and you might have to move this slide back and forth till you line up so you can, hit your holes if they're covered. So that gets bolted to the frame, to the wood, and that's the base. That's so it can pull out the drawer. So the first thing I did again is I built the box, right? And then I mounted this to the bottom track, and I started thinking about where it's going to be. Again, I used the tape measure here. Lots of little sketches. And then once I kind of figured that out, then I mounted this on the wall, okay? And then I bolted the backside of the drawer onto this. So it was a little tricky to do. You had to think it through, right? Because you can only put it on like one way. And again, full disclosure, the first time I did this, I didn't do it right. So the first time I did, I'm like, oh, I'll just have it hanging off the wall. I just didn't like it. It just didn't feel right. And it wasn't a weight consideration. Something just didn't seem right. It looked cool because it was floating, but I didn't realize I needed to float it. So this was the second iteration of this. And I think for you, the real big thing is just to always like give yourself an invitation to have fun and practice and play with this. And I know I had a lot of fun building it because I had to think a little bit. I became very one-pointed and drawing things and just kind of giving some consideration. Also going to the hardware store, go roam around, go see things, right? And even for the residential application of having one of those like spice drawers, I think they call them. And like if there's like a little space, they would build one of those into a cabinet again. Would have been too deep, it wouldn't have fit because again, this space I was only 20 inches in diameter, in depth, and I think the cabinet's like 30 something. So that's why I bought this cabinet. So I bought that refrigerator. That's why I knew I had to build one thing that I couldn't like buy in a store. And again, that was part of the fun. So hopefully if you have any questions, you can pause and post them below the video or send me an email. So we got the timber, we got the hardware. And how about I just turn the camera and I just show it to you. And I'll just show you kind of how it works. And I'll show you how I routed out the back and how I repurposed the X-ray plexiglass onto the back of the drawer so that if you have spices and things in there that it won't fall out with the paracord that I use in these bungees. And I also used, what you're going to see, I also use these cleats that are stainless steel that you'd see in the marine environment. It's probably a lot of influence from Hawaii and living in the boating realm and things like that, but these are durable. They're not going to rust. You can scratch them, it doesn't matter. And I put paracord around them, and I actually put the bungees around them because when the bungees came, they came with these little round discs, and I didn't feel like giving them a haircut. And I used them over here, these little round discs, because they actually had space to fit them. But over there, they really didn't, and I just decided to not do that. But without further ado, let me kind of go into the details. I'll do a little side view, and then I'll show you the back side that might be hard to see. And if you don't see it, just let me know. And then I'll show you the back side and the mechanism and how it works and how you can do it too. So let's do it real time. All right. So what we have right here, let me see if I can set the camera up for you so you can see this. Let me tilt it back a little bit. So as you see here, we have again, this is the 5.5, right? And then this is 5.5. And then in here, this is the 3.5. And then you see I have the paracord here. You get it at the big box store. And over here is the bracket I just described. And it goes almost all the way to the back, minus a little bit of space. I left like about 1/4 inch. And again, when you lift up on this, which you probably can't see right now, it pulls it out. And then it goes to a certain point, it locks. Right? You can't pull it out any further. You can't move it. So again, these are the cleats that I was mentioning that are, you would see the big ones if you ever seen a boat dock. They have these big cleats there. So that's what I use to mount my bungee cords here. And again, the back side, this is that 1/8 inch ply. Real easy to use, but it's functional, flexible, durable. And you can do the same thing for whatever your application is. And over here, you can see how I kind of sanded this down a little bit so that when it gets to here, it kind of sits right in there. All right. And let's see, hopefully you can saw all that. All right. Give you a little bit of a closer view of that. And so you can see how it's sanded down over here. And again, this is the 3.5 that I made the whole box out of. And again, the other reason why I made it like this, as I mentioned, is that I wanted to be able to get back here. Like if I had to reach something, it gives me a little more room, right? That other 1.5 inch of space allows you to kind of, if I need to reach something like in the drawers here. Okay. So I also made these, again, relatively indiscriminate in the size based upon, going into the kitchen and measuring things in your kitchen cabinet and saying, okay, what would fit in here? What do I need to fit in here? What could I store in here? What would be something flexible? Again, at the bottom here, as I just mentioned, let me just readjust the camera for a second for you. As I mentioned, I made this distance here because that's almost the same distance as the fuel fill on the outside, and that's essentially what I mounted that wood onto. So this runner wood here, which is 3.5 inches, that's mounted on top of that box that they made in the back there for the fuel fill. And you can also see closely, if you look up carefully, you can see the L bracket. Let me see if I could zoom into that for you. Yeah, you can see that L bracket right there, and that screws to the plywood. But again, you can see right there, it just mounted on the 3.5-inch pine. It's like a little runway. And that's how that was built. And it's really well supported. And if you look in here, which might be again a little hard to see, that was how the side one was mounted. The one with the latch. So again, just bolted that to the wall. Pretty straightforward. And I've mentioned this before, but again, this was the old X-ray box, and I just took the lens off of it, and I put some, again, I used the smaller wood that I showed you guys, and I just used that. I actually took the 3.5 and I cut it in half, so that I cut it down the middle and bolted it in there so I could put anything I want in there. But again, I knew what I needed to do because I knew the space that I did or didn't have, so to speak. Okay. Again, here's a close-up of the brackets. Again, this isn't that hard. I know you can do this. And there's brackets underneath there as well. And then you can see some of the mounting that I did for the drawer slide. So I have that mounted underneath here. So that's how that's supported when it expands and comes out. All right. All right, next step. Here in a second, my tripod is trying to escape. Okay, so now that we saw the front side, let's talk about the back side. So again, you see over here, I mentioned in one of my videos, I repurposed this J-track, and this is the J-track that I used over there on the carpet. So I was able to, again, repurpose the last little pieces. And again, this was the exact size of the X-ray. So, you know, when you slide into the X-ray, you can see that like if you see in TV shows or movies, that's exactly how that worked. And again, hardware-wise, as you see here, I made some holes. So I did it up the first time. I said, oh, I didn't like that, so I redid it. And again, I made this cut here on an angle so that it could tuck up there nicely. And these are just wood screws, nothing nothing out of the ordinary. And as I mentioned here, this is where I took some time to take this piece of wood, drill some little pilot holes, like an 1/8-inch pilot hole. And then I took the Dremel with the little sanding tip, and I just used that my screw gun. I sanded that out. And I made sure I had enough space to lift up so it would release. Right? If you see the mechanism here, when you lift it up, that thing moves, right? And then I wanted to make sure I made enough room so I could get my finger in here. But that's it. I mean, again, I just took some of those brackets. So now you can see it on this side. So I just, again, reused those. The idea of taking those 2x2 brackets, or I think these might be the 1.5s, and I bolted them to the extensions. And then I used the wood in here, as you see along here, the shelf, so that I could support the weight of that. And again, there's not a lot of weight there. And in the video description, I'll leave a link for this so you can see what the weight is. I forget what it is right now. And that's it. Again, this stays here. It's really strong. You just heard it lock into place. And until you lift this up, you see the mechanism, how it works. And then when you push it back, it doesn't come out. You can pull on it all you want. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful for you to understand. Again, I left a little bit of space here, and that's why, again, when you close that, I know it's hard to see because it's really dark in there, but when you essentially close this back, anything that's on those shelves can fall out. And that was just thinking about that one day, like how could I do that without getting overly complicated? But that's it. That's carpentry on drawer slides 101. And again, you could do anything you want to do here. This is just what I decided to do. So do what works for you on your build. But again, I think this works really nice, and it's strong, and it's not going anywhere. So anyway, I hope this is helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. And I'll see you in the next video.